Thank you, George. Now to our continuing coverage of seniors and the coronavirus. I know this is a topic that might seem a little strange to talk about on a TV show, but the pandemic has forced all people of all ages to look at the inevitability of death a little differently.
Our friends over at Eden Hospice sat down with Kai to explain some of the healthy ways to process the reality of our own mortality.
Joining us now is Sean O'Reilly. He's with Eden Hospice. Sean, thanks so much for coming on the show to talk about something a lot of us don't ever want to talk about. But my question for you is, why is talking about accepting death something that can be healthy and whole?
Yeah, we find as chaplains and social workers in hospice, it's something that some families, some patients have had a hard time talking about. But when we accept it, when we say, this is the journey that I'm on now, it's part of the rest of my life, there is a wholeness that comes. There's a way to be healthy and to still be dying. It doesn't mean that life is immediately over. And so what we say is, what if we find healthy ways to be in the days that are left? And that kind of conversation can be really freeing, can be really important. And it's for patients and also all their loved ones to say, here's how we want to move forward through each of the rest of the hurdles that are for us and in the days that we have to live meaningfully.
And psychologically, I think it's been so taboo and untalked about by people, younger people as well. Why should we as human beings in general accept our mortality as early as possible?
Well, yeah, like you said, it's something that we avoid, and different cultures handle it differently, right? But our American culture in the last few hundred years has said, let's put that off as late as possible to even mention. When it comes to hospice, the research shows the more that we are able to own that journey when the time is right for us to look at our death, we have a healthy and less physical suffering in our death when we have approached it in a whole way. And so as a society, as we talk about it, like with COVID-19 and the pandemic, if that's been something that people are saying, this is really surprising, it makes me look at my life differently, that can be startling, and it can be important and healthy too, not just at this time, but moving forward. Like after this pandemic, when we survive it together, how do we keep carrying each other in honest ways that open us to a healthy process of like, grief doesn't have to be something that one person carries and hides in shadows. But when it's brought to the light and we know we process this together, I've thought about that, like we're living through the pandemic together. How do we also carry each other's stories of death and dying and grief and remembrance?
That's one of the biggest things I've learned from not just in my own personal life, but people that are my age, that 2020 has been that year of really reflecting. What are some things we can reflect on in the last year and take into 2021, accepting our mortality and finding our own journey? Sean, what do you think about that?
Something that has been interesting in the pandemic has been like on social media, people have sometimes found ways to say, here's what I need. I had a really rough week. Or here's what got me through the past tough month, right? And those stories have always been part of the end of life journey. How are you dealing with this? Where do you find meaning? And how can you express what you struggle with? As we do that throughout our lives, it's a healthy experience, and we have agency and ownership to say, I value these things in my life and at end of life. Here's what I want, here's what's meaningful and beautiful for me as I live and as I die.
Sean, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Sean O'Reilly, chaplain for Eden Hospice. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you.
Thanks.